So I was doing some weird, stupid Nosdormu's teachings with Blossom and stuff. And yeah, it was kind of cursed, but it was going to be kind of along the same lines of what I was talking about earlier, where you'd spend your essence bursts on Blossoms and then use your normal essence on Echo and or Disintegrate if you had Energy Loop, because mana is going to be negative in that spec.
Thank
and
God
you get all your essence. What?
I said, thank God you fell asleep.
Well, the thing, because Total is like, well, where do you get your essence bursts then? Well, you have so much CDR on Fire Breath that you get it like every 15 seconds or whatever the hell. So, and Leaping Flames and all that fun stuff. But yeah, thank God I fell asleep, I guess. Doesn't matter anymore. So
I refuse to believe we're gonna need an Energy Loop, right? I'm just I'm not going there.
Yeah, I mean, ideally we don't actually pay for any Blossoms anyway.
Exactly.
Okay, honestly, I could have recorded that even, since that was okay.
I'm already recording, by the way.
Oh, very good. You can use this as the intro.
All right, yeah, I'm gonna see what I can do with it after. So the first thing that came to mind was this might actually be a good place to use Titan's Gift, because all the Blossoms you're gonna be sending have Ouroboros, and you're gonna send them with Essence Burst, so you're always gonna have Titan's Gift for it, right?
You are. The only problem is that you're gonna be so, like, talent points are gonna be so rough now, since you want everything, right?
I mean, I'm definitely not touching reversion talent.
I think you mentioned it when we were just talking about there a second ago, Voulk, where it might be optional to replace it with like Cycle of Life, you know? If you need a consistent time on your Cycle of Life and you can play around it properly. I have one problem with Cycle of Life now. Your stack count of how many Blossoms you need until you trigger a cycle doesn't reset on pull, so it might be a try and only have one Blossoms before pull with a pre-pull TA Lifebind stuff, but that'll happen when we get there.
I think we almost famously as a spec have a lot of ways to do a lot of healing on pull if we need to, and it's been relevant exactly one time in the last two expansions. Arguably two if you include Razagath, since that was also a triple TA boss.
I suppose so, but it's I
good
think
to have
that
pick you can deploy on the pull if you need it.
Really good for testing. But I think that I think Cycles and Titan's Gift could be kind of like a swap in talents, maybe.
We are lucky in that Flame Shaper, well, honestly, both trees have at least a couple of talent points that aren't doing anything functionally for you. Stuff like Exhilarating Burst, where they're very good talents. They're increasing your healing by a good amount, but they aren't changing your rotation. Like, if you can get similar value from other talents, you can easily move those points. And so that's where your options to pick up like Fluttering Seedlings or Ouroboros or Cycle can come in.
Yeah, I think the problem there is gonna be if it actually gets the value, right? Because I like Cycle of Life, but it's bound to just proccing a bunch of points where it's just gonna do nothing, right?
I think especially if you're Flame Shaper, look at it a different way. Like, if I'm on Queen, there are like 3 dangerous moments in the fight where I really care about my healing. I can increase those moments by more than 10%. And so I think the talent, even if I only got 2% out of it overall, getting 10% during my most important ramp seems pretty valuable to me. And that's pretty easy to set up too, right? Since you just sit at 2 until you ramp.
Yeah, and that also kind of means that you do not really want Field of Dreams because it might mess up your counter.
Yep. That would mean you can't take Field of Dreams for sure.
Yeah, and I'm not complaining about adding more complexity to Flame Shaper, but this does add the thing where you have to track how many Blossoms have you sent and how many you have left before your next cycle, and to have a burst ready to actually proc the cycle, and which is actually kind of cool. Like it ties into the spec really nicely, but it does add that extra thing that you have to keep in mind.
It's actually a bit funny because this patch we famously have to make sure we have 4 stacks of Temporal Compression right before we do our Engulf combo. Now, if we want to include a guaranteed Blossom at the end, you still want 4 stacks so that you can Fire Breath to get that Essence Burst to proc the cycle right before you Engulf.
Oh, right.
I mean, but you know, if you miss it, it's not as punishing as if you miss 4 stacks of TC on
It's
your
definitely
Dream
not as
Breath.
bad, but it's just
Yeah.
funny that like that was part of the gameplay, and now it stays part of the gameplay for a completely different reason.
I think it will be interesting. A lot of these fights have like a lot of heavy periods of like rot damage, and I think cycles of life on like those ones will be on those fights specifically would be absolutely just amazing because you're going to get a ton of value out of that. Just every essence burst you get, just throw out a blossom, and you're going to get cycles procs, and you're going to be doing a ton of healing all the time as Flame Shaper, anyways, with Engulf. But then there's other fights. For example, that slot machine boss, he does a big AoE absorb damage like every 30 seconds. I wonder if you can time 2 engulfs on that every single time with the cycles could be a really interesting play.
Yeah, you definitely have that alternative playstyle, right? Where
Yeah.
you do take Field of Dreams, you don't worry about sitting on 2 Cycle of Life charges going into your burst, and you just cast Blossoms for every essence burst, and just like accrue value over the fight. Field of Dreams is a very good talent in terms of HPS. Like it increases your Blossoms by a lot.
Does it have a counter now? Like right now on live, do you get a buff that says how many blossoms do you need per cycle? Or
Yep.
Oh, cool. I forgot.
It's been a while since we've had to play Blossom builds, but I remember keeping track of it in Aberrus.
I've got a good weak aura for you, so I'll send you that after this.
Yeah, it's easiest to use it on a weak aura, since I think by default it shows it on the Cycle of Life or Blossom. I think it shows it on the Blossom tooltip maybe, which is not ideal, but the weak aura is very good. So there's definitely room to take all of these talents. You can maybe drop Grace Period if you're going to be echoing Burden Embrace a lot. I know we're going to cover that in a second with the tier set. You can drop Rush of Vitality or Dreamwalker, since that was always kind of a bad talent. You only took it to get to Call of Ysera. I don't know, I think that the talent tree just opens up a lot now. Like, beforehand you had maybe 10 talents that you would never take, and now all 10 of those are in play. You won't take all 10, but they're all maybes, which I think is very exciting.
I think out of our entire talent tree, I think maybe unless you're playing reversion, there's only like 3 talents that won't see play, like actual like genuine play, which is punctuality, time of need, and then not life gear flames, but
I think Power Nexus is the weakest talent on the tree.
Oh yeah, you know what, Power Nexus, yeah, and I think that's kind of a bait talent too, because everybody's going to try and get to it, because then they can drop 2 blossoms. I know famously people like to do that with Blossoms build, just get the 6 essence, but it doesn't really matter when you have 2 essence bursts, and you should have 2 essence bursts, so...
Yeah, I really don't intend to pay for any of my Blossoms, so Power Nexus seems unnecessary.
Yeah,
I think we should really emphasize that if you're playing like Haste Flame Shaper like we've been talking about, you really do not want to be casting 90 Essence Blossoms.
It's so
You don't want
much
to pay
mana.
for them, yeah. You just want to get them for free from Essence Burst, which you'll be able to do. Like we actually get a lot of Essence Burst through a fight. Like it's actually crazy. I know it's more right now since you're often echoing Reversion, but even without that, you get quite a few.
Through the CDR from Flame Shaper, getting all the CDR on your Fire Breath. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm constantly casting Dream Breath and Fire Breath all the time, and so the Leaping Flames just flood in, and it's just I do feel a bit flooded sometimes.
Yeah, not anymore.
Yeah, one thing that I want to touch on real quickly that we were talking earlier on the Discord Voulk is that even without the talents and everything, there's still some situations in which pressing blossoms right now is the correct button to press, right? It's like the appropriate thing that you should do. It's just really annoying, and you have to make sure that you're not consuming echoes. And
it's annoying, and also it's not even just you can't press it when you have echoes out. You also, as you just mentioned, can't press an echo spell afterwards. You have to wait until it bursts, so you can't even like blossom. And then and this was a big problem on Princess, where I did run Ouroboros. You'd want to drop blossom, and then you'd want to TA, but you had to wait a GCD, or your TA would just immediately be grabbed by the popping blossom, and so that goes away too.
Right. So even if you hate blossoms and you do not really like the talents at all, these changes means that now you should actually be pressing blossoms every now and then, because it was already the correct choice, and now they remove the annoying part. So even without the talents, you should still press it, right?
Yeah. The one downside with this whole package of changes is that now we can probably get good value out of Enkindle, but now Enkindle is on a choice node with expanded lungs, which means you just can't take it. Like it's just
Yeah, that was something that I was
gone.
just about to mention when you guys were talking about that. Is now we our Kindle not only got reverted back to 20%, is now on a choice node with 30% Dream Breath healing, which is just, I mean, there's no world where we drop 30% Dream Breath healing for 20% more Blossoms healing. I know we talked about it earlier about having, Ouroboros, Titan's Gift, and then and Kindle, and just having like these massive blossoms just every so often coming out, which is really great thematically, and I think it'd feel really good. But just being put up against 30% Dream Breath healing is it's really impossible to take that talent.
Since that's also 30% consume healing. If it was up against like Luminous Roar, where you're gaining consume healing, but it's kind of dicey whether you're gaining Dream Breath healing, I could see that maybe being a good choice. But nothing in the tree competes with expanded lungs.
Yeah, it's just not a talent, sadly.
But that's okay. Do we have any other Blossom-related things we want to talk about before we jump to the tier set?
Yeah, I am really excited to be able to be doing my echo ramps and being like, oh wow, we just took a hit from X mechanic that wasn't supposed to happen. Maybe like an orb dropping on court for the boss charges, and you just want to drop you want to do any sort of healing, but you just can't because it'll consume your echoes. And being able to just drop a blossom that actually does a lot of healing with Ouroboros, it's just going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, you could also track Oro charges and like quite aggressively cast Blossom. Like whenever your Ouroboros foot fills up, you could swap in a Blossom. Definitely quite a few ways to play it. And like we're not guaranteeing a lot of these Blossom talents will be picked. It's just interesting that they are potential picks now when they really weren't before.
Yeah, actually, I kind of feel weird about the tracking Ouroboros charges thing because I think I said it before. There's a lot of times where Blossom is good, and it's good even if you do not have the aura charges, and then there's a lot of time where you have the aura charges, but Blossom is still bad. So I get about tracking it. I do have a weak aura for it that tracks it, but I also feel about getting baited into throwing an aura just because you have the Ouroboros stacks, even though it's not a good place for a Blossom.
Yeah, that's true. It won't always be the play. Especially if you're like holding your Blossom for cycle value.
Yeah.
But if you're playing like the Field of Dreams style where you just drop Blossom a lot, then I don't know, there might be something there. I always said Aura was our best talent. Always said it.
It is pretty good. Well, it ties the spec really good.
It's gonna be so fun to play. I've been waiting for a reason to play that talent and like play into it heavily, and the time is now.
I had a great time with it on Princess, but I couldn't find any other fights this tier that it was a good fit for with our current play style. All right, so we look at the tier set.
All right, sure. So
maybe just go through what changed.
Yeah, so obviously main thing is insurance echoes.
And it's a bit weaker as a result.
Right, yeah. So I was gonna actually mention something about that. The thing is, like, you have the echoes and you consume the echoes with one thing, right? So if you were gonna consume them with Burden Embrace, then right, now you got insurance echoing on that. But if the insurance is weak enough that you do not want to be consuming the echoes with Burden Embrace, then the change kind of does nothing, right?
Yeah, that's true. You're pretty much hoping that with the hot added that echoing Verdant Embrace is the choice most of the time. Not all of the time, but most of the time. And we're going to have to look at numbers to be sure about that. Obviously, Chrono already echoes Verdant Embrace a lot anyway. And in Mythic Plus, you're going to echo Verdant Embrace a lot, so it's going to be a straight buff there.
Yeah.
But yeah, in Raid, it's going to be closer. I think that I mentioned this earlier, but I think Chrono gains a little less out of it because if you're echoing Verdant Embrace as Chrono, you're already going to do a lot of healing in the next 5 seconds, right? Because you're doing a Lifebind ramp, you're going to have at least Spirit Bloom following, and usually people don't need even more healing. The hot also ticks every 3 seconds, so you're only going to get one tick in your Lifebind itself, so you're not going to be transferring a lot either. But Flame Shaper doesn't have as much to follow up Verdant Embrace. Sometimes you'll be able to combine it with Engulf, but most of the time you'll just be sending it alone. So I think the Hot has like more room to do a lot for Flame Shaper. In Raid, this is not for Mythic Plus, and Mythic Plus Chrono will get good value out of it.
I was thinking a lot about some of the fights that we've tested in the PTR already, and with you always having Dream Breath on yourself from your Dream Breath cast, there is a lot of times where I find myself with a lot of echoes out, and I have Verdant Embrace not on cooldown because we have the CDR now, and it comes back quite fast. But with the reversion gameplay, it feels kind of stale, and there's been a lot of times where I've wanted just to consume it with Verdant Embrace, all my echoes, that is, and just hit the engulfs on myself. And this, again, going to go back to the slot machine boss, I think that this tier set buff, being able to echo out our insurances, along with being able to just engulf ourselves with for consume flame healing and also just engulf healing to the lifeline. I'm very excited to see what we can do with that and see what some of the numbers we can kind of come up with in testing.
It was also already okay on live, right? Like sometimes I echo Verdant Embrace already because while Reversion can do more healing overall, sometimes you just want to top the raid as much as you can before the mechanic hits, especially on like Queen. I think I did it quite a bit. And so now those plays will be even better.
Yeah, between Flame Shaper and then maybe echoing Verdant Embrace a lot, we're going to be a very hard-hitting upfront bursty healer, which I've missed ever since Abris with the Spirit Bloom set. So
you will also still have Golden Hour. So if it's like a tank healing boss, you can still, something like Rashanan was this tier, you can still just echo reversion the tanks if they need it.
This also just solidifies that Chrono Warden is gonna stay on the Lifeline spam into Echo rank 1 to Spirit Bloom for another die, right?
Yeah, probably.
I was hoping we could go back to echoing Spirit Bloom directly, but I think this just kills it.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, because there was some hope you'd go back to Echo Spirit Bloom this tier since you lose the 40% Spirit Bloom healing from the Season 1 tier set. Yeah. But now you also get the insurance healing on everyone that you BE, so Lifebind is probably here to stay. That's fine, I like it.
I like it too. I was hoping we will go back to echoing Spirit Bloom directly, part because it's easier, both to play and to explain to people. But yeah, I like it. I got used to it.
Yeah, I was really hoping to see kind of Chrono Warden go back to Spirit Bloom. I think Lifebind is great and it brings a ton of value. But as Harrek said, explaining it to people and then also playing it in real time can be extremely frustrating. I know other specs have the same issue where you want to channel a long cast into something, but there's so much movement nowadays that sometimes it can be hard. And yes, we can tip this TTS our Spirit Bloom into ourselves, but then we lose that second after image on ourselves. So I had some issues with that. I was really hoping to see maybe the Spirit Bloom portion of that get buffed and or maybe even Dream Breath become better with double time, but unfortunately,
the other thing to remember is
that
Spirit Bloom rank 2 is really damn fast, right? Like you've usually got 4 temporal compression stacks. Like we're talking like a 1-second cast here.
Yeah, and it's funny.
Instant.
It's funny you bring that up because I found myself a lot in testing. You always want to rank 1 your Dream Breath, right? And I end up actually rank 2ing or rank 3ing it now with our haste and with the 40% really cast boot. Yeah, it's so fast. Like you can't even do it with the server lag on PTR, and in combination with us losing some Dream Breath uptime with the new Flame Shipper talent, the 20% faster. Sometimes I like instantly cast my Dream Breath out, but it already has like 6-second duration on it, and then I'm struggling to hold my Dream Breath on myself to be able to engulf myself, and then it just dropped off me, and then I'm sad. So
that is also a problem I ran into a lot in testing for the one boss I did. That your Dream Breath it's so fast that you just look away for a second and it's gone.
Yeah. I found myself multiple times during testing where I would have 1 charge of engulf and almost 2, and my Dream Breath would have 15 seconds of cooldown still left on it, and I have nothing to engulf. So hopefully we can do something about that.
I think it's gonna require mostly playstyle adjustments because right now you're used to sending your Dream Breath and having it digit margin of window to send the engulf, but next patch is gonna be like you do not press the button unless you're ready to send the engulfs right now. But I think if you adjust for that, it's fine. But it's gonna take a moment to like mentally adjust to it, because I think it feels way more than what it actually is. Like obviously the engulf is now reducing the duration instead of adding it, and then the 20% talent, so it does hurt a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So many times I instantly cast my Dream Breath at ranked 2 or ranked 3. I got 6 seconds left to myself, but the mechanic is until like 7 seconds from now, and I'm like, well, that's not good. So
Yeah.
At least stasis itself should be easier now, like because Dream Breath is guaranteed to go on you. It doesn't matter how long you sit on your stasis for, since the Dream Breath at the start will auto-apply it to you.
I will say, being able to start your stasis, Dream Breath, engulf, and then like instantly release your stasis, and then have Verdant Embrace and Dream Breath already back on cooldown to cast again feels just having Dream Breath out and like big Dream Breaths out on 15 people in like a 10-second span feels phenomenal. So
just having Dream Breath on 6 people in general is a very good change, I think, since it always did very good healing, but not to enough people.
Yeah, but like YouTee is mentioning right now, and I think we haven't talked about it a lot, but when you're just sending your stasis and releasing it instantly, and then using the cooldown to send another Dream Breath, right? Then you're just covering like 3/4 of the rate in Dream Breath. I actually think that adds a lot to like the healing profile of Flame Shaper.
Yeah, I noticed a lot because I was comparing some of my PTR logs to some of my live logs, and the amount of healing you gain from Dream Breath from A, not casting it into Narnia, and B, having the 6 targets and more Dream Breath cast just in general from the CDR. I saw Dream Breath just skyrocket in terms of like the difference between patch to patch. It's just I mean I've doubled, tripled, quadrupled my Dream Breath healing in one patch.
Yeah, it also feels a bit weird that you can send your 2 engulfs and release your stasis, and then you look, and then you have Dream Breath and engulf back up already.
It feels amazing to play though. Just being able to cast these big, powerful spells just back to back, back to back.
Yeah, Lust in particular is very funny with almost everything scaling with haste.
Yeah, it's so fun. I love it, honestly.
The only downside is you rarely get a Lust when you actually need the healing. Sometimes they line up, especially with. This was a good tier for it because you lusted late in a lot of fights because of Spy Masters. If we have something like that again, could be good. It broke up the monotony of like the on-pull lust that we were accustomed to.
Well, to be fair, I'd rather not think about that specific angle too much, because that's already true in live, right? During Bloodlust, your engulfs are just that much stronger. But
and also every healer is way stronger in Lust, right? Like you're pretty much never wiping to healing during Lust.
Yeah, but it's not like most raid teams are changing to Lust timing to help the healer, right?
It is something you can consider when you're planning your cooldowns, though, since it's going to give you more engulfs in your stasis cycle.
I will say that your Dream Breath, you will notice when you're in Lust, because your Dream Breath does just kind of fade away with all the extra engulf cast. You will have 2 charges of engulf, and you will not have Dream Breath ready. So that might be something to look at. I might have to test that a little bit more, but I noticed a lot during Lust is when that happened. So
need double time in the Flame Shaper tree.
Oh my gosh, with the 15% crit too, I mean, it would go absolutely crazy.
But also that would be 3 Dream Breath nodes in one tree, maybe a bit much.
Maybe they should bring the 15% crit to double time.
I think maybe they just replace Fulminous Raw, since I don't actually want my Dream Breath to last 5 seconds. I know it's not 5 seconds, but it's too short.
20% is a lot when it's a 15-second window and you're cutting 4 seconds off of it basically. So
yeah, it's definitely made worse by the fact that engulf consumes 2 seconds per usage.
Just add another 20% to expanded lungs,
Honestly, if they put Fulminous Raw on the same node as Enkindle, I might even take Enkindle. Fulminous Raw is obviously a 20% increase to consume healing, which is very good, but Enkindle could have a lot of value now too.
I wonder how much it is.
Let me choose.
Like Harrek said earlier, how much of it is just us traveling flame no longer having Traveling Flame to increase the duration, or if it's just Fulminous Roar.
It's a bit of both, right? And also a bit of just not being used to it.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of both, but I feel like us losing Traveling Flame is hitting a lot harder, but definitely both.
I really like the idea of moving Fulminous Road with expanded lungs in the tree. I don't even know if I will pick Enkindle at that choice note, but that feels like more of a choice note. Like, what would be the point of making a choice note with there's no real choice?
Yeah, the only downside is that I don't know how any of this affects Devastation. Who of course shares the tree, and like maybe the way it's set up right now is because of Devastation. And like this is the Evoker DPS spec we care about, so we're gonna make sure they're okay.
That's fair. That's fair.
But yeah, I'm not sure. That would just be our suggestion, I guess, as preservation players, but we don't have to consider the flow-on effects. And like that's the Evoker DPS spec they're not deleting, so it needs to be good. Alright, is there anything else that we should cover?
So this one's one for you because it's a little bit of more math thing, but they reduced the HUD of the insurance by 30%, but the trigger on lower hill by only 50%. So maybe this changes matter. What do you want to trigger? Obviously, the ideal is for you to trigger in EDN, right? But
yeah, it's the kind of thing that you just like don't have much say over anyway, so you're just gonna take whatever you get.
All right, fair enough.
Ideally, you will just proc it late in the hot, but to be honest, it's much more likely that you just barely ever proc that part, and it's just a hot, really, for almost all healers. You're getting a couple of these a fight, but people just don't drop low that often in a situation where they don't just insta-die.
Especially because you're throwing a burden embrace on the people that actually have threatened.
Yep, I'd say they are even less likely to drop low than the insurance that randomly procs through the fight. And like you're likely to follow up to the hot, the insurance hot itself is ticking on them. You might have some life bind healing. It's just those people are safe. Or they're gonna get one shot and insurance does not help.
It's probably gonna proc a lot in Mythic Plus though.
Yeah, probably. Honestly, that sounds really good, right? Because if you already life bind most mechanics in Mythic Plus. Like, yes, it's partially because Season 1 just includes perfect life bind windows in every dungeon, but it's also just one of the best ways to heal Mythic Plus type damage patterns. And now, your same sequence also puts a hot on everyone and then heals them again if they drop low. Like, this spec is so good at healing Mythic Plus.
Yeah. I did notice one thing I noticed on PTR from my very brief time of testing this. If you, so when you Verdant Embrace yourself, right, you get 6 seconds and somebody else gets 6 seconds. And if you Verdant Embrace yourself and that person has Echo, that the 6 seconds goes to them, and then the Echo Verdant Embrace goes to them, they get like a pandemic hot version of it. It's like a super long duration. So
yeah, okay. So there's some bonus value there probably since.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, most of the time you might not have an Echo on the tank. So yeah, I think that's going to be very powerful. But also, like healing short bursty damage is already not really an Evoker problem. So just getting even better at it.
I was not expecting these changes, but I am very, very, very excited to start testing them. Like,
yeah, there's obviously going to be a lot of work to do in terms of working out which of these talents that we now have access to we can take. And that'll just be a combo of math and testing. So hopefully we can get through it all over the next few weeks.
I'm so excited. It just, I feel like you said earlier, Preservation 3.0, I feel like I have a new spec almost.
It's very exciting, yeah.
I will start by telling everyone to find a good keybind for Blossoms, because...
Shift middle button.
Mine's on 5. I highly recommend it.
I think I have it at F, and it's shared with Temporal Anomaly. Don't ask me.
I'm not going to ask.
Yeah. Something better than Shift P. As long as it's better than Shift P, I'm happy.
Is it a cast sequence macro, TA, and then Blossom?
No, mine is just if I'm hovering over someone, it's a Blossom, and if I'm not, it's a Temporal Anomaly.
Did you ever mess that up, or you're clean?
Yes, no, I have messed it up. I messed up a lot. I think you know that by this point.
Now your mess ups won't be as expensive.
Yeah, I can say I intended to do it instead of having just one single random blossom in the middle of my whole echo log.
Just seeing your entire life vine echoes just with your blossoms. I think I might actually scream if I did that. Well, I have done that, so I have screamed, but
All right, I think we are about 30 minutes over time.
Yeah.
that's all
This is
right.
probably a good stopping point. If you have any questions about either of the changes, drop by Wormrest Temple. We will be talking about them probably for the rest of the week at least.
At the very minimum, yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks. Bye bye.
Thank you. See ya.